Why do people subscribe to me? I don't know. I just make nonsense. I don't even have a tripod. I just tried to sit down and write a script for YouTube about having self-belief, and then I was like, well, hang on. I can't write that right now because I don't have it. So I don't want to come across disingenuous and be like, hey guys, this is what you need to do. When I'm over here being like, I don't know if I believe in myself, you know? I think my belief kind of comes and goes in waves, and maybe that's just life in general, right? That life just comes and goes in waves, and like there's never not one thing. What am I saying? There's never not. There's always stuff to be learning, and like nothing is stable 100% of the time from my experience. I will kind of say that there is probably one thing that I like to repeat to myself. Maybe an affirmation? Would you call it an affirmation? Maybe I would. I'm just making a sandwich, by the way. I don't think that's of any interest to anyone. Put you up here. Is that better? Should I do that? That is a better lighting. So when I was like trying to practice, trying to get better, or even just trying to lay a foundation to be able to do public speaking, I YouTubed it. As you do in times of struggle, you YouTube things. No one looks on Google anymore. You just YouTube it, and at least I do anyway. YouTube like public speaking. And anyway, long story short, I found this guy who does all of these public speaking videos. One of the things that he said is to remember these 3 words, and it did actually help me. I thought, I don't know if this will, but I kept repeating it to myself before I went up on stage and did this little speech at this charity event, and it actually did help. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe this guy is onto something here. And so I kind of adapt that to other areas in my life. The 3 words he said, and it's not the 3 words that you think it is. The 3 words are, and that's okay, and that's okay. In terms of like the public speaking thing, if your voice shakes or if you forget what you're saying, your mind goes blank, your mouth goes dry, and that's okay. And it was just like this calming reassurance that I needed for the public speaking things and like for doing my brother's speech and stuff. And so I kind of tried to start adapting that to other areas of my life. So for example, at my brother's wedding, I was really struggling to make proper conversation with people because I don't know how to talk to people in real life, it turns out, other than like the basic small talk, bare minimum stuff. And usually I would really beat myself up about that I can't make proper conversation like a normal person can, or maybe I zone out in a conversation, or I forget literally what they just said. Like someone could be talking to me and be saying something and I would have just like, wait, how can I explain this? It's like pouring water through the middle bit, and it just comes out the other side. That's the best way to explain my focus. Sometimes someone would just tell me something and it's just like, it's just going straight in one ear and out the other. That's probably the best example to say that, rather than getting a whole kitchen roll being like, it's like pouring water through the centre bit. Going one ear and straight out the other. That's why that saying was made, for people like me. Going back to what I was saying about being social in social situations and social reactions, and me struggling to make conversation, decent conversation with people, or me even make a connection with someone or whatever. And that's okay. If I feel really sad and I feel like I don't have the momentum to do anything that day, if I don't have the motivation to do anything, or I just can't literally focus at all, instead of beating myself up about it, and that's okay. Like, for example, it's okay if you don't hit your goals, if you don't fulfill your goals, if you don't get the interview that you wanted, the job that you wanted, the grades that you wanted, and that's okay. Basically, it kind of applies to any mistake or embarrassment or shame or anything, and that's okay. It's accepting and reassuring your inner self, your inner critic, your inner child, just to give that little reassurance that it's okay if it's not perfect, it's okay if you make mistakes, it's okay if you fail, and that's okay. This is so beautiful here, like what the hell? Okay. I'm just gonna take this down because my head hurts. Okay, that's better. In relation to like perfection, it's okay if it's not. Those moments when you feel like really embarrassed, like, well, what did I just say that for? Or you don't say something right, it comes out in a different form to what you intended it to. A bit like right now with what I'm trying to do, and that is okay. That's 4 words, and that is okay. I don't know if that would help anyone with life or with taking a step towards self-acceptance, but it has helped me to just not beat myself up about it. By saying this phrase, you are not only building on your self-acceptance, but you're also building your confidence, because when you beat yourself up about something, it wrecks your confidence. It's just in that vicious cycle. So by self-accepting and being like, okay, and that's okay if it didn't go completely to plan, and that's okay if I said this wrong, or if I didn't do things like this the way I intended it to, or indeed if I feel so like lost and stuck in life right now, hello, and I feel like everything I try is just pinging back like an elastic band, and that's okay that life isn't exactly where I want it to be right now. That's just kind of like a little affirmation that I've given myself. Like, if you think that that phrase would work for you, then take it and run with it. I've got it on my desktop at the moment. Like, I've made a little desktop wallpaper, and I do a little quote every month. I love that, by the way. I started making a sandwich, and then I picked up the camera and was like, no, this is more important now. Anyway, so yeah, I put that little phrase onto my desktop on my laptop. Does that make sense? Desktop on my laptop. I put that little phrase on my wallpaper, on my desktop wallpaper on my laptop. So every time I open up my laptop, it says, and that's okay. And I change that quote every month. Who knows what next month will bring. I'm gonna continue making this sandwich now. I've made my sandwich. Can you see? So the other day I was on the train, and this was like a 2-hour train journey, and I was really sad. Like, I was really upset. For a while there, I was like really keeping it in. I was really trying to not cry on this train, on this 2-hour-long train journey, because I was afraid of other people's judgment, because I didn't want other people to see me crying, and it was this whole thing. And then after a while, I was just like, why am I holding this in? Like, clearly I need to cry. I need to get it out. And who cares if other people see me, right? I'm not gonna see these people again. And so I just let it all out. Literally full face, crying, weeping, sobbing on this on this train. And you know what it was? I actually felt quite empowered by it. Empowered by the fact that I got over that fear of judgment, and got over the fear of people looking at me or staring at me, or even over the fear of being scared that someone might come up to me and be like, hey, are you okay? Which on one hand, I'm quite glad that no one did, because it meant that I was able to just be in my own space and just really feel my emotions and really kind of let it all out without having to explain myself to anyone or justify why I'm crying. I did wonder, like, what would I say if someone came up to me? Because there's always the worry that they might not understand it or say something that will make it worse, you know, that just kind of thing. So there was just all of these things, but I'm just so glad that no one did. Although I almost felt like I did need a hug in that moment, because when I got off the train, my mum was there and I gave her a hug, and then it all just started again. I just felt this real, almost like empowerment of being able to push past that judgment, push past that fear, and just let my body do what it wants to do. This was the other thing. I was sitting there thinking, why should we be suppressing our emotions all the time for the sake of another human's perspective? You've almost got to just do what's best for you. And I feel like holding back in that kind of situation when it was just like bursting out of me, this sadness, this grief. Why do we do this as a society? Just because it's not socially accepted to cry in front of other people or out in public, it doesn't mean that we have to abide by that anymore. Like, things are changing, the world is changing, people's views are changing, and we all suffer, we all struggle, right? Why do we have to confine ourselves depending on what location we're in and like who we're surrounded by? Just let it out. Be in your emotions, because honestly, suppressing it just makes it so much worse. There's that thing with crying, where crying kind of releases all of this negative energy. Do I want to say energy? Do you know what I mean? Like, releases all of that negativity, and it doesn't make you feel like 100% better. It doesn't solve the whole issue, but I do think it does help in the long term. There is no weakness in crying. Do you know how tough it is to actually go, you know what, I'm not okay. I'm really struggling at the moment. I'm struggling with loneliness, with feeling so lost in life, with feeling so overwhelmed and numb, and I don't know what to do anymore. Do you know how strong you have to be able to say that out loud? Being able to open up and admit that to someone else is one of the greatest strengths that we have. One of the greatest strengths that you have. Being able to cry is a human necessity. It's how we process emotions. It's how we get through things, right? It's how we move that negativity out of our bodies. Crying is a requirement. It's a requirement that we all need to do. Don't let anyone tell you that you are weak and insecure for being vulnerable. And hey, what do we say to that? Crying in public, and that's okay. It's okay to cry in public. It's okay to show your emotions. It's almost like more vulnerable to be crying in public than online. I have put out many reels in which I have shown that I'm visibly upset, and that's quite a vulnerable thing to do in itself. But I realized the other day, actually crying in public when other people are around me, that's another level of vulnerability. Being able to be vulnerable in an open space, in a public space like that, with people you don't know. And I just found there was real empowerment with being able to do that and just let go, right? There is so much freedom in letting go. If you know, you know. Younger Kate would be horrified, not only showing my emotions, but showing them in public. Or like what? I used to be a very closed person. I used to be very closed book. Like I was under lock and key, basically, in terms of like my mind. Not literally being under lock and key. I just never used to show my emotions. I never used to talk about how I felt. I always pushed everything down. And doing something like crying on a train in public is just like such a massive growth difference. Thinking back to old me, I would never have done that. Never ever would have done that. Crying was only reserved for being in my own space, being on my own, like in complete solitude. So yeah, I think that's just like a massive big step for me to be able to do that. Probably gonna like sound really trivial to a lot of people, because maybe some of you are like, yeah, I do that all the time, I always cry on trains. But just for me personally, it's quite a big thing to have done or to be able to do. I realized that I rambled, and then I didn't make the sandwich, and then I made the sandwich, and then I rambled some more, and now my sandwich is not to be eaten, so I need to eat the sandwich. Oh, it's a classic. That's my little rant for the day. Crying is a necessity, and that's okay. But hey, give that phrase a go. Instead of beating yourself up about it, because I know you do, because I do. Instead, try and approach it from a different angle and be like, hey, 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 hey. And that's okay. What a powerful phrase, right? And if you want to hear another empowering phrase that I made up myself and that actually changed my life, then you want to check out this video right here. And of course, I'll see you in the next one.